Welcome back to Cephas Unscripted. Once again, it's only Casual Bias and Brea van Herfst. Note Brett Burns, he just got home, told us, listen, the power's down. We thought load shedding was done for a couple of weeks now, but he's got home and there's no power. It's not in Cape Town, because Cape Town is that much better than Joburg. Brevan, what are we saying? Hello, my friend.
How are you? Yeah, all good. All good. Just came back from my own practice as well. Working hard. But yeah, keen to talk about some news in the rugby world. Some big stories coming out.
Two big stories. Well,
Yeah.
the first one is a big story, and the second one is literally just something we pulled out of our arse, to be fair. We're going off interpretation, okay?
Yeah.
So the first story that we're going to cover tonight, we got Jordie Barrett moving to Leinster. Absolutely massive. That is a massive story. We've seen it a couple of times with some other All Blacks players, just doing short-term contracts in different countries. We've seen it with, I think Sam Kane's doing it now. Ari Savia is doing it in Japan. And then the second story, we're going to be talking about chasing the sun, because that's the one thing that we haven't really covered on this channel. So that is more for our South African boys. And obviously, the end of this weekend's episode that we had a little bit of a Easter egg, as you would call it, when we watch movies. So start off with it. I'm just going to ask you your initial opinions. Jordie Barrett to Leinster, massive, right?
Huge. It's absolutely huge. When you think like how strong that team is now, I actually fear what they can do next season. It's going to be. I personally think they have a very high chance of doing the double this season. Even next season, I mean, goodness gracious me, they have to do the double next season. So I think just that backline now, especially with Jordie, one of the best playmakers at 12, can play 15, can play wing if needed. He's so versatile.
Covers everything.
Exactly. And he's a dream signing. It's not even like Leinster needed that signing. It was a shock. And just it's huge to hear how and I saw a tweet from Jim Hamilton. And he said, this is what happens when, one, you invest in your academy, two, your government invests as well, and three, when like the union invests as well. And all three have happened, in especially for Leinster in an Irish sense. And that team is just seriously scary next season.
It's like when everything just goes perfectly. It's such a well-run club. I know we got a bit of flack for it when we said, listen, is it even fair that the whole Irish team literally plays for Leinster? And we got the flack in the comments saying, listen, but these guys are Leinster bred. They are from the academy, they get pulled up. And I didn't know all of that. Obviously, we don't do too much research before we go into this stuff. That's why it's Cephas Unscripted, right? And what the vibe I'm almost getting from this, right, is I know not everyone watches football or soccer, but like Man City, that's already won the championship, for instance, 2 or 3 times in a row, and then they add Erling Haaland to it as well. That's kind of the feel to it. Like, it's not needed at all, but it's such a brilliant signing in terms of it's short term. They can use him a lot while it's during the Six Nations marketing. It's massive. It's just absolutely brilliant. And the thing is, they save so much funds by not buying a bunch of players. That's why they can spend on RG Snyman, who's a Tupou from Australia, and then Jordie Barrett. Because, those are big money signings. But they don't spend as much in terms of buying players because they just bring them all through the academy. So you don't have to pay transfer fees or anything like that. I think this is an absolutely sensational move. Now, something that I want to bring to your attention is, would you like South African teams to also do that? Spot a couple of players from, let's say, the Super Rugby, give them like short-term contracts to help us out as well. In especially like look at the Stormers. We've got so many injuries. I would love for us just to have some more players, but we just don't. Would you think that is a solution, or do you think it stays South African? It's the South African pride.
Look, I think there's a few things we need to look at there. Like, for instance, if you remember, like Carlos Spencer playing for the Lions, that was also like very cool to see. But do we have the funds that the Irish have to be able to get these players from Super Rugby You know,
Not
because
not with the contract that we're on at the moment. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have a contract that we don't get all the fees for the tournaments until 2027, right? Isn't it?
you look, I'm not 100% sure. It's just I don't think we have the capacity to get like the likes of a Jordie Barrett or something to come and play for in the South African franchises. I think you kind of need to save that money for Springbok players, because we want a lot of the Springbok players to play in South Africa. But obviously, if the funds are available, that would be great to see. I mean, I would love to see some talent from New Zealand, Australia, goodness gracious me, even from the Northern Hemisphere come and play in some South African franchises if it makes sense. So, I mean, but also like a point I want to raise as well with regards to the signing of Jordie Barrett. Obviously, we see Ergia Snyman announced, then Jordie Barrett, and do you think, and this isn't a dig at Leinster or any kind of thing like that, it's just having a discussion here. Do you think that there's maybe a favoritism towards Leinster in the Irish Union, purely because look at their wage bill must be so much higher than the rest of the other three teams in Ireland? Purely because, like, yes, they were brought on from the academy, and that is completely fair. But obviously, those are players that are going to demand kind of higher salaries because they are Irish internationals.
I think it is a bit of favoritism, but take it with a massive grain of salt. I think it's massively because the fact that Leinster is such a big attraction at the moment. All the hype is around Leinster. Would you rather back Munster? Okay, I know they won the URC, while all the hype is around Leinster at the moment. They have got the most Irish representatives. They win the most tournament. They've got the richest history, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment. They pull in the bigger crowds. They play in the bigger games. So yeah, I think there's a bit of favoritism, but I don't think it's unfair favoritism, if you get what I mean. I'm not going to sit here and think that Munster don't get backed at all. Remember, they signed Ergia Snyman, but Ergia Snyman was signed by Munster. Munster still has a lot of players, right? So yeah, I think there is maybe a bit of favoritism, but nothing to extreme levels where I think it is utterly unfair towards the other teams. Because that's the thing. Like, if you attract more, would you say it's unfair that the Stormers get to keep Damian Willemse, but the Cheetahs can't buy Damian Willemse? No, because the Stormers pull in more money. They rack in more money. They get more fans at their games. That is just it's all in the end, it's business, right? That's what it all comes down to. And business-wise, I think this move is exceptional. I know I've brought it up earlier, but I think the short-term thing makes it so beautiful, because he's still going to go back and play the second half of the Super Rugby. It gets people that are from Europe that love seeing the All Blacks, but they can't always watch the All Blacks. They get to see Jordie Barrett at least live. And that is kind of what we also want to see. Like, I'm not opposed to getting a couple of players into our teams. I know we are heavily focused on just South Africans, but the fact is, like, as soon as it's broken once, you can just go over it. And we've got Ben Loader, who literally played for London Irish. So we've broken it. Get us some players in. I'm not even talking about the biggest names on earth. I'm not asking you to bring in Damian McKenzie or Beauden Barrett or whatever, or Jordie Barrett. Just give us something extra to get the guy to get some more views on us. I think it's a great move. Yeah, let's move on.
I just wanted to bring up one last point on that whole topic, and this is just touching on Leinster as a whole. Do you think that team that lines up next season, if you look at it from like a whole 23 points of view, or even squad, do you think that could possibly go down as one of the strongest teams of all time in club rugby?
It's always tough.
Like, if you consider the
compare.
Crusaders, prime Crusaders,
it's always tough to argue across generations, because obviously I think this Leinster team maybe beats that Crusaders team, but that Crusaders team played under different rules. You know, because that was Richie McCaw now would be the worst player on planet Earth. He'd give away too many penalties, but during that time it was absolutely brilliant. I can't look past the dominance of Crusaders, right? They've won the Super Rugby now even 7 times in a row. They're not going to win it this season. Okay, that's a bold call, but they're down on the log. you're looking at their prime team that had the likes of, I think it was Umaga played there. What was it? Dan Carter, Richie McCaw. It was just an absolutely beautiful team to watch play. Like if you thought about the best players in the world, and you all automatically thought of New Zealand, and you thought of New Zealand, you just thought Crusaders. That's just how good they were. Now, obviously, Ireland at the moment, very strong team. Leinster, most Irish guys consist out of Leinster. But the thing is, if they go on now and win a couple, because I'm not going to give them that gratitude if they have not won the URC since we've been there. They've lost 2 finals in the Champions Cup. Valid, they've still done brilliantly. They're still an insane team, probably still one of the best to ever do it. But I want to see them get that world dominance that the Crusaders had, if you get what I mean. So it's not a knock on Leinster, but if you want to compete in terms of being the best to ever do it, I don't want you to just have 4 trophies, get it consecutively. Because that is the records that the Crusaders set up, and stuff to just go across generations. It's always tough. It was the same with us having to compare the best backline players of all time, because it's would that guy still be that good in the modern day? Probably not. So, but anyway, let's move on. And this is a topic we have neglected. Bad on our point. First and foremost, if you do like the channel so far and you do like this episode, please remember to like and subscribe. We always forget to ask that from you guys, but we appreciate each and every one of you guys. You guys have been amazing. The channel's been on sensational growth at the moment. And this one now is for our South African brothers and sisters. We are talking Chasing the Sun, because we had an absolutely impactful episode. What was it? Episode 4? Episode 5?
Episode 4.
Episode 4, we saw the games, the nerves that we all felt during that French game, during the English game, and this is all the build up to the grand finale, which is the final, obviously, and the trip back home. Brevin, how did you feel just watching those 1-point victories again?
You still think like, are we going to get this done? Like you still think
still we had a sensation.
It's weird because you know that we won it, but you still like, how did we do this? Like, are we actually going to win this? But it's crazy. Like, just touching on the whole series as a whole, I think if you just look at Rassie Erasmus, you need to appreciate the guy so much, because yes, he's so hard on those guys, but at the same time, he does it with such a smart mentality. I mean, if you look at after the Irish game, where he literally said Dwayne, Earban and Sia weren't even in the conversation for the quarterfinals. I mean, how bold of a coach to literally say, reads out the names of who is in contention for the quarterfinals, and you leave out 3 of your biggest, 3 of your best players and 3 of your major leadership guys. That takes some other different type of coaching and being able to work with guys, knowing which guys can take the criticism, which guys can't. His man management is just sensational. And also just Nienaber's way of explaining how to defend the try line, just getting points across to the boys. But like you said, just watching those games as a whole, you think like, are we going to get this done? And I mean, it's still...
It's weird that you know the result, emotions. But still your blood pressure feels like it's going through the roof. It's absolutely insane. And what I loved about it is I remember you sending a message on the group, like a video clip of Andy Farrell talking about the British and Irish Lions, right? And I love the contrast in terms of how coaches approach it while talking to their team, because you heard him talking calmly but passionately, really trying to motivate the guys. Well, Rassie, for instance, takes a whole different approach, and they bring family into it, and it's a more aggressive approach. How are we going to motivate these guys? Kill them. Fuck them up. That is literally, I can swear, because we're talking about Chasing the Sun. There was a controversy. Should they change it to Chasing the fucking Sun? But anyway, besides the point, I love the contrast between the 2 coaches and how every single coach can be so individualistic or unique in their way of coaching and motivating the guys. Because we know Rassie gets the best out of absolutely everyone. It's amazing that it's almost, I don't know if you picked it up, but it feels like they are focusing on Rassie being more of the coach in this team than Nienaber. I don't know if they decided to do that because Nienaber isn't the coach anymore and Rassie is taking over. Do you think that could be...
You know what? I think Rassie Erasmus, as he what if I look at it from what I'm seeing so far, they've touched. I mean, the latest episode. I mean, Don Heman, the forwards coach and the scrum coach, really just like they dove into the whole scrum and well, he's the scrum coach, and they just dove into how how important that scrum was against France and England. But I think the reason they're showing Rassie so much is because he has the ability to rally up troops, and he has the ability to get people to play for, not only for him but for a country, because it's quite a cliche, play for your country. But
And obviously, he gets the viewing rates up. If you ask, who do you want to see? Jacques Nienaber talking to the camera or Rassie? Everyone wants to say Rassie because he's such a controversial figure, such a hugely loved but everywhere hated outside South Africa figure. So
yeah, but like even Jacques Nienaber, I think I've seen a side of Jacques Nienaber that makes me respect him even more. Just his ability to read the game, his ability to identify how important defense is in our game plan. So I've really enjoyed how they've obviously Rassie's been a massive focus point in the documentary, or in the docuseries, but I think they've also done very well in touching on how Felix Jones, how he had an input. Like I said, Don Newman, Jacques Nienaber. So yeah, I think that they've done a great job so far. And
yeah, everyone has got their time in the sun, and what I really love, and I'm sure all the coaches, international coaches especially, they know all of their players very well. They know their families. They know how to understand the player. They know how to use them to the best of their abilities. And I absolutely love this series because it shows you in depth what is going through the guys' heads, what they're thinking before the match, what they're thinking after the match. And Jim Hamilton said it as well. Like, you don't really get a more in-depth viewing perspective other than Chasing the Sun. I would love for Full Contact to almost take the same approach, because that was what I was kind of expecting going into watching that Six Nations documentary, Full Contact. We didn't really get that. We saw Ellis Gensch sitting in the car and eating burritos, and that annoyed Brett, or eating wraps or whatever. I would love for the Full Contact series to go a bit more in-depth with that. But overall, I think it's an absolutely sensational series. I love every bit of it. It feels to me like it's the first one. Standards were set so high, and they are matching that standard. Obviously, the first one was so new, we loved it. So it's tough to actually compete and be better than that. But overall, I've absolutely loved every single second of it. And now finally, we ended with where we are using our own interpretation. And a couple of episodes ago, we spoke about who could be the potential new captain for South Africa, for the Springboks. And we mentioned a bunch of players. I know I brought up Bongi Mnambi. And the issue with Bongi was the controversy around him in terms of, remember at that time he had the controversy with the ref. I think there was still a bit of backlash with the Tom or Ben Curry situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now you could see Rassie really trusting Bongi's leadership. He told him in this episode, while Siya Kolisi and Eben and Dwayne have to sort out their shit, you are the captain and you're going to act like a captain. You're not going to be shy. You're going to be the captain and you're going to talk like the captain. You're going to act like the captain. And after watching that, I am pretty much 80% sure, because he fills all the credentials to be the next captain. Because the credentials were play in South Africa, be close to the ref, and have leadership skills, and whatever the other one was. Bongi fulfills every single one of those. The only thing that I think is a bit old, maybe. What are your thoughts on Bongi being the next captain? Because that's kind of what it feels like it was taking us in this episode.
So I think, you know what, at the end of the day, I had the only issue I had with Bongi, and it just came out. We've seen it a few times. Is Bongi may sometimes struggle to get his point across to the ref in a way that sounds respectable, instead of sounding maybe aggressive or something along those lines. But after watching that episode of Chasing the Sun, you know what, my respect for Bongi has gone up massively, purely because I see how much the guy cares. I see how much he cares for this country. I see how much that team means to him. I see that people will get behind Bongi because he will play for them, so they will play for him. And you know what? If Bongi is the guy to take over from Sia, I have no problem with it because I believe he's a guy that can do the job. I think he'll have leaders around him like Eben, like Sia. I mean, we even saw Peter Steff finally, letting out some
Yeah.
words. And he's a leader. As much as he's quiet, he leads with his actions. And you know what? I think Bongi is going to be the guy, and I'm all for it. The only issue is, if I'm correct, Bongi is going to be either 35 or 36 at the next World Cup. I cannot confirm that, but he is going to be on the later stage of his career towards 2027 in the next World Cup. So yeah, I think if he can, and the thing is, do they go with Bongi as the captain and leave Malcolm Marx on the bench?
That was what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive thing. Is Malcolm not now the second choice hooker here? So there's massive things to consider here.
The thing is, like, I don't see our starting front row and our bench front row as really starting and bench front row. I see it as the first front row and the second front row, because we've seen it so many times where the full front row gets replaced at halftime and the other boys come on. You've even seen them being replaced before halftime. I think at like 38 minutes. I think that one game against Scotland, it was in the red of the first half, and then we made the sub when we got a penalty, right? So we brought on our other boys. I wouldn't be surprised if we go for. I don't like the word co-captain because I just think that takes away from the captain. But I think we'll have the vice captain will have more of a captaincy role than your traditional vice captain. So I think it will be Bongi that will be the captain, and as soon as he gets subbed, then we might see Sia take over for the rest of the game, for instance, or Eben taking over from there, something along those lines, or even right. That is kind of what I feel. Because obviously Bongi is not going to play the full game. We've got too much talent in terms of the hookers and stuff. Like we were debating, should he even be still in the Springbok squad with the youngsters coming through? You're talking about the likes of Malcolm Marx is still there, Bongi's there, Akker van der Merwe. Almost said Netland Fouchier. Just the guy from the Stormers. I just forgot. Andre Geventer. Franco. Andre Venter. You see, so there's a lot of competition for that position of Bongi, but his leadership really shone in this episode alone. So we're going with Bongi Mbonambi to be the captain of South Africa, and we are not opposed to it, especially after watching that episode. I think when you truly see the inside of what it all matters to that player, we saw it at the end of the game. It looked like the dressing room was cleaned out. So that was after the team speeches and everything. So that's probably an hour and a half after the game, and still he's emotional about it. You could feel, he felt the pressure of being a captain, and he really took that on board. So I would be happy to call him captain. Is there anything that you want to add in terms of chasing the sun, Jordie Barrett, Bongi Mbonambi?
I think just. First of all, I can't wait to see the last episode. Obviously, that's going to be the one that might make me tear up again. And I think just in terms of Bongi, I think as a country, we just, like we all know, obviously Sia Kolisi would probably be the captain if he played in South Africa. But I think now with it probably going to Bongi, I think we just need to rally behind him. Trust what the coaching staff are going to do with him, and just understand that we've seen it 2 World Cups in a row. Rassie Erasmus knows what he's doing, and I think we just need to rally behind Bongi and know that he is the guy for the job, and and I'm sure he'll fix the flaws that he has as a leader and in the way he may approach things with the ref, because that's something that can be fixed, and I'm truly not worried about it. So yeah, I think Bongi. It's not officially announced, but we are more than happy to have him as the guy to take this country forward.
Yeah, and that brings us to the end. Spoke about Jordie Barrett. I forgot to bring this up. When we spoke about Jordie Barrett, we spoke about chasing the sun, and then obviously ended up with Bongi Mbonambi. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you guys each and every time. Obviously, it was just the two of us today. Hopefully, Brett gets his power on sooner rather than later again, and we'll be back on on Friday to give you a prediction video once again, talking about the URC. We love each and every one of you guys. Thank you very much. Please remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Cheers.